Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Van Diesel back on Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys attack, come subscribe, this was hobby. This time we're covering for set 10 Avantgarda for Brandt. Honestly, Avantgarda was not one of my favorite decks walking out of set 9. In fact, it was my least favorite because its artwork, made thumbnail editing very annoying to deal with, but also it just felt very basic and just Brandt-ish feel, but I don't know why. Now in set 10, even though it only got 2 cards of support, it actually feels pretty solid. So let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? And we'll see what we got. First up, we have Blue Death Star Sora Period. Grades of a boost, 5k shield, 6k base. On a road upon you second draw card. Standard star, not supposed about it, you just get a free draw when you road upon it, which is pretty solid just getting the draw when you go second. But then also the fact that something I love about this deck is that this deck, both lore-wise and physically wise, requires Sora Period and Soul because, you know, it's the pilot of the giant robots of death. Honestly, I love that. I love that the starter is actually required for once. Thank you, Bushy, for listening. I don't know why you put in a Brandt deck, but thank you for doing that. It makes Brandt a little bit more unique. Then we have our over trigger. We have Star Dragon Deity of Infinitude Elder Breath. Grades of boost, 5k, 50k shield, 5k power. Over trigger, you may have an over trigger in your deck. If it's trigger, a card, draw a card, choose one units, except for the turn. Individual draft attack, activate is the difference, which you can double the power and critical of all front row units until end of turn, of your front row units, by the way. Increase the double power and critical when activated. So you know when you drive check this, someone on your board's getting plus 2 million because they get the 1 million from this and then they get the extra 1 million from the double. And then, you know, the critical, pretty much it's game that turn unless your opponent has 3 PGs lying around. And everyone that has played against Brandt probably has PTSD from this because they probably played against Nordlinger and they probably got the sacked on them when they were at 8 crit. I've only been able to do that once and it was on camera and I enjoyed it every so slightly because I got to bully the hell out of an AI with it. So, one of Elder Breath, cool. I never see it in this deck, but if it ever did, great, because the Vanguard has a restand, it's probably going to kill with it anyways. One of. Then we have our normal triggers. We have 3 copies of Amulet Connector, grades a boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 plus 5k shield, so you know, 10k shield, which is nice, adds for a little bit of helping in guarding power. It's a draw trigger meaning you can use to increase your hand, which is helpful every now and again because, you know, sometimes your hand will get clouded with orders and you want to draw your Persona rides or things that can just actually attack and not just orders. So 3 of the draw trigger, it's nice to have, but you don't need too many of them. Then we run 4 fronts, which is transforming, heavy machinery, heavy Constellian, grades a boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Okay, for those of you that know me, fronts hates me. A lot of fronts hate me for whatever reason that may be. Specifically, Nova fronts in general hate me, and this being a deck that it goes into Nova, technically speaking, in premium, you would expect this front to hate me too. It doesn't. In fact, this is one of the few fronts I will consistently sack without needing to sack them. What I mean by this is there have been several games where in my twin drive for Avantgarda, I will pull 2 fronts. Don't know why. It just happens. But for Castellian, if you're wondering why it's not in Pyro, because you don't need that much guard power in here. Your more focus should be on just going on the offense. Speaking of going on the offense, that is why I run this, because again, I say, I will consistently just randomly sack 2 of these out of nowhere in the same turn. It's not like just drive check them in one drive check, stand the Vanguard, and then go for a second one. No, it is drive check them in the same drive check. So twin drive, both are fronts. Like 4 of Constellian. It's stupid of how often I see this show up. It just is 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Patrol Robo Decker Cop, grades of boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger all at the end, but a boost to put it to soul. Choose your because it's 2k for the turn. Okay, any Vanguard restanding deck pretty much has to have criticals because, you know, extra pressure when you restand the Vanguard, but also, you know, being able to go into a soul, which is not necessarily super important, but like in case you're going hyper aggressive that game and there is a card in this deck that costs soul and you do need Sora Period in the soul for the entire game, this does come in helpful if that situation arises, which to me it never has yet, but I can see situations where it will arise at. So 4 of Decker Cobb. And we have 4 copies of our heal trigger and ultra rate Spear Dragon, grades of boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Just a standard heal, nothing special about it. I don't really like the effect heals too much because they're too situational, being 10k shields at most of the time, and then only in those specific situations are they 25k shield. So if you want to run those effect heals because maybe you're playing competitively and those are helpful, or maybe you're just playing at your locals and a lot of people play things that those heals are good against, then that's on you. Then that's you. You can do what you want. But I don't do either of those 2 things, and I just like running the normal heals because I like the consistent 50k shield. Run what you want. I run what I want. We don't do each other, etc. Let me move on to our grade 1s. First, we run 2 copies of our first set order, and that's Disruption Strategy Sprite. I don't know what its updated name is because I didn't feel like checking when I went to go update these slides, but we all know what this thing is now. Anyways, grade 1, set order after set order is played, put it to order zone. All in was put into your soul from your order zone. Choose one of your rear guards, retire it. one of your opponent's rear guards retire. I cannot read today. Choose one of your vanguards and it gets plus 5k for the turn. Okay, all around pretty solid because Avantgarda sends stuff to Soul. Therefore, when Avantgarda does that and gets extra 5k from his skill, you can get another 5k, so Vanguard gets a total of plus 10k, and then you can kill an opponent's rear guard, and not to mention you get a draw from Avantgarda. All around is a pretty solid just support card. It's kind of annoying to be on the receiving end of this, where your opponent can just nuke your rear guards out of nowhere instead of going for the kill if they know they can't kill you. So 2 of Sprite. I hate going against this because it kills everything I love and have most dear to me. Screw you. Then we move on to our PGs. First, we have 4 copies of Planet Wall Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0 resources, K base, continuous sentinel. You have the 4 suns in deck, on put in a guard circle. Choose a read, it cannot be hit in a battle, and if your hand's 2 or more cards, you can discard it. Standard PG, no special by business means if this only one cards and you place on guard circle, you don't have to discard 1, which is great, because that means that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and then when your opponent counterattacks you, because you've left over pretty much all of your offense on the board, and now you have 3 hand cards, you can just be like, guard the first one, then throw this down, don't have to discard, and then you're safe. So then you keep that one last card for guarding power. All around, Planet Wall's a solid PG. You can run Violate Dragon too, because, you know, both of their skills are the exact same, but because this is one of the newer decks, and Planet Wall is the newer of the 2 PGs, might as well run Planet Wall in the deck, so 4 Planet Wall. And then we have 4 copies of Blue Death Star Ruri Tuning, Grade 1 Boost, 5k Shield, 8k Base, act rear guard once per turn by soul blasting 1 and discarding 1, choose a Grade 1 strategy card from your drop zone, put it to your hand. Okay, it basically means, you know, use Avantgarda to send this to Soul, draw, get plus 10 to Vanguard, kill an opponent's rear guard, then use Ruri Tuning skill, Soul Blast out the thing you just sent to Soul, discard whatever the hell you feel like, and then just get the order right back. So it's pretty nice that she can just recycle the order and make your Soul Blast technically free. And it's just a solid grade 1. The issue is that you never really need to use that ability unless you just want to flex on your opponent, but it's nice that the option is there, and she's just a solid early call unit because she can do things. And she's also a retire fodder, because you never know when this thing's going to be the death of you. Like I said, this thing has come back to nearly kill me. It hasn't killed me yet. It has come back to nearly kill me in a lot of games, to the point where this thing is now a target fodder in my mind. 4 of Ruri Tuning. She is a good grade 1. Most of the time she's a vanilla, but when she actually uses her skill, she leads to the stupidest bullshit of retiring ever. Then we have 4 copies of the Maniac, who I don't know why I love looking at, Blue Death Star Hanada Hathaway. Okay, I don't do Gundam, but for some reason this, like, mask over here, this helmet looks like a Gundam helmet. Like, there's this, like, reflection bit makes it look like that. Anyways, grade 1 boost like a shield, AK base. Auto when it's placed on rear guard. If you have a Vanguard Blue Death Star in its card name, Card boss 1, draw a card. I love the fact that even if you're playing a budget deck where you're only running, like, not even the ride line cards, you're running, like, the budget ride line, so, like, you're running this in it, and then you're running the grade 2 that doesn't have a Vanguard skill, you can still use this to draw a card because all the cards have Blue Death Star in their card name. Great. And then auto rear guard when it boosts if a strategy card is put into your order zone this turn. This is also why Ruri Tuning can be annoying, because she can just get you the grade 1, because most of the time you're playing the grade 1 first. You know, he'll get plus 2, and at the end until end of battle, and then if it was in the center back row column, countercharge 1. So he can boost anyone against the 10k as long as you put in order this turn. Again, Rui being a thing. But then, if he was boosting the Vanguard, you get a counter charge, which is great, because that means Avantgarda is free now. And the deck doesn't really have a CB problem, unless you let it get a CB problem, and now it doesn't. So, 4 of Hanada Hathaway. Just a good, solid card, get you draw power just by playing it whenever the hell you feel like, as long as you have CB, and then it can make Avantgarda free. 4 of. Just a good grade 1. Then we have 1 copy in the right deck, none in the main deck, of Blue Death Star Dark Justisar Findeus. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, 8k base. Auto is run upon by Blue Death Star Skyen Forcer Sylvan. If your soul has Blue Death Star Sword period in it, search your deck for up to 1 grade 1 strategy card, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. If you do not reveal a card, you may call this card to rear guard. Okay, so all around pretty solid, because either you can choose to fetch this order, or you can just call it out from Soul. And here's the thing I've realized. In set 9, when this deck first came out, I rarely called this card from Soul. I think I saw people in general, including myself, so me, people I saw, my friends, etc., call this thing a total of maybe 1 time each, and then the rest of the time they search the order. And now I've realized in set 10, at least when I play it and when I see my friends play it, I haven't seen anyone else play it yet, that we most of the time do not search the order now. It's the only time we search this order now, because most of the time it shows up in hand, is when we don't have a single order in hand. Every other time, though, we just call this because it's an 8k booster that you can use to rush. So And you don't have to call it either. You can just choose not to search, and you can just choose not to call if you don't want to. All around, it's a solid grade 1 because it can get you an 8k to the rear guard, even if it's a vanilla, and then, or it could get you an order. So all around, it's just solid. I like it a lot. I think it's great, and I've come to appreciate this thing more. One of in the ride deck of Fendeus. And then we run our grade 2s. First up, we run 2 copies of Bombing Strategy Thunder. Grade 2 set order. After set order is played, put it to your order zone. Auto, when it's put into your soul from order zone, choose one of your vanguards until end of turn. It gets +10. Your opponent cannot intercept nor play blitz orders. And I remember I said before that this was probably going to be the one that breaks the deck, and it sadly in set 10 hasn't, because I have yet to use this in my set 10 deck. What I mean by this is I will play it, and it will just stay there. Because either the game ends on my turn when I'm using the grade 3 one, or I die the next turn because my opponent Persona Road and then pulled the over. That sounds like a joke. I'm not joking. That has happened very consistently. Anyways, being able to give +10 to the Vanguard is great because it also gets the additional +5 from Avantgarda skills, so total +15, so it's a 28k, possibly 38k Vanguard, so, most likely you are restanding unless your opponent has PGs at the ready. And then, being able to lock down intercepts and blitz orders for the turn, solid. The only way this could be better is if it nullified PG specifically for the Vanguard attack, but then it'd just be doing too much. Either way, it is a solid order, gets the power you need, nullifies the defensive options your opponent has, just 2 of Thunder. It's just great. Then we run 4 copies of Blue Death Star Ryuku Genviania. I butchered that name so much. Anyways, great tunes, 5k shield, 10k base. I gotta say, this art is solid. I love the blue paint job on it. It just looks so great, especially with the background. Whoever drew this knew what they were doing. It looks beautiful. Anyways, continues rear guard during your turn. If you have Avantgarda in its card name, it gets +5k power. Great. Just by playing the main grade 3 and by just getting to the main grade 3, it's an automatic 15k beat stick. Cool. And then if a strategy card is put from order zone into your soul this turn, gets an additional +5. Suddenly, Rui Tuning's making 2 different combos, because not only can she loop this back into your hand, so you can therefore use Honda to half the way to countercharge one, but then you can play that order, send it to Soul, and then use Ganiva's skill to get +10. Honestly, this deck works fine with just running 4 copies of this thing, because again, Rui Tuning exists. So 4 of him. He's almost guaranteed to be a 20k base at all times, and if for some reason he's not, he's a guaranteed 15k base because there's no way in hell you're not on Avantgarda. 4 Vernikia. It's just good. It's a perfect grade 2. Then we have 1 copy in the red deck and on the main deck of Blue Death Star Sky Enforcer Stelvin, grade 2, or Stelvin, grade 2 5k shield, 10k base. I love how he just looks like he has guns in the background, and then it's just his actual rifle over here. Anyways, auto when is wrote upon by a grade 3 card Avantgarda in its card name. If your soul has Blue Death Star Sword, period, search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 strategy card, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck, and then if you do not reveal a card, you may call its card to rear guard. I love how it's the same exact skill of the grade 1. Typically, I tend to hate that, but I love how this deck can just focus out on calling rear guards if you need to. And again, just like Fendeus over here, normally, especially because this order has now become basically useless, and the only reason you run it now is just in case you need it, but I have seen play of more this thing being called out than actually being used to search, which is great, because I mean, you can call Fendeus one turn, attack with it, and then the next turn call Sky Enforcers to the same column, swap their circles, and then boom, you have an 18k column. All around it's solid, because again, even though it only gets you a vanilla, you still have rear guards to swing with without having to, give up hand cards. So technically you're giving up 1 hand card in the form of this, but that doesn't really matter because it'd be going to order zone anyways. And not to mention the fact, again, you don't have to call if you don't want to. You can just choose to get the creative strategy instead, or you can just choose to do neither. Either way, it's a solid grade 2. I like it a lot. One of in the right deck. None in the main deck, sadly, because again, no rear guard skills. And then we move on to our grade 3s. First, we have our 3 copies of Shock Strategy Gale. Grade 3 set order after set order is played, put it to your order zone, and then auto when it's put into your soul from your order zone. If your opponent's Vanguards is a grade 3 or greater, choose one of your Vanguards until end of turn. It gets auto Vanguard. Unless you attacks, all your farmings get +5k for the turn. That does so much. Okay, so first up, I've played this deck before. I rarely go first with it, second with it, I mean. And the few times I've gone second with it, I have come to realize, do not use this. The going second on first grade 3 turn. It is not a good idea. Don't use it unless you're 100% confident you're going to win that turn, because I would rather use the rear guard killer over here to get my, extra rear guard kill instead of losing one of my strongest cards in terms of outright power output. Now, if you have multiple of them and you don't have the grade 1 order for whatever reason that may be, then yeah, obviously go into Gale, but don't. Trust me, it doesn't work unless you're that confident you're going to kill that turn. But Gale going, like, I don't know, into a Persona right turn is powerful because that means your whole front row technically got plus 20 because 10 from the Persona ride and then 10 from this thing in total. And it typically, when I Persona ride, tends to be the turn I pull double fronts. So that's a total of plus 40 to my front row, which means logic doesn't exist and everything in my front row is probably hitting for somewhere in the 50s. So all around, Gale is just solid. It adds numbers, it adds pressure, and pretty much anything that walks into this is going to have to drop a bunch of hand cards to defend itself. So 3 of Gale, just a good order that can lead to some bullshit numbers. Then we have 4 copies of Ed Houghton Vogel, Grade 3 Persona, 13k base, autos put on rear guards, counter boss 1 and soul boss 1, structure deck or drop zone for up to 1 grade 3 set order, reveal it, put it to hand, and if you search your deck, you shuffle it. Okay, I'm an idiot for not realizing this, but my friend made me realize this, where you can just use Avantgarda to send this to soul, get the proc, and then call Airhead of a Vogel, and then Soul Blast this out, and then just bounce it right back to hand, which is all around fair. But most of the time, you want to search the deck out first, just to make sure, like, you're deck thinning, because deck thinning is deck winning. But it's nice to know that you can add the grade 3 order from drop zone to hand, so you can use it for discard fodder, you can use it for Soul Blast fodder. And then auto rearguard once per turn, when a set order is put into your order zone, it gets plus 5k power for the turn. So, it's an 18k, pretty solid. Adds a little bit of pressure, especially when you have, 2 of these in the front row, so they're both 18Ks, plus Persona Ride, 28K, plus this thing, 38K in total, plus my double fronts, 58K without boosters. 4 of it have 10 vocal. 1 of them is already good. 2 of them, your opponent's walking away from this turn severely crippled, if they're walking away from this turn at all. This thing is the bane of my existence because my friend loves to play Avantgarda, and I have seen this thing come down so many times, and I've shot down so many of them. 4 of. And then we have our last card in the deck, and it's the main grade 3, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck, of Blue Death Star Skyvenator, Avantgarda. Grade 3 turn Persona, 13k base, active Vanguard once per turn. If your soul has Blue Death Star Sword, period, put a strategy card from your order zone to soul, draw a card until end of turn, this unit plus 5k, and auto Vanguard once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit attack. If the attack hit or you Persona of this turn, by counterbossing 1 and discarding 1, stand this unit, and it gets -1 drive till end of turn. All around, pretty solid. It's a guaranteed 18k base. It's as long as you have an order and as long as you never soul blasted sword, period. And then you get that draw to replace the order, and then only when its attack hits or your Persona road is when you actually have to counterblast. And again, thanks to Hanada Hathaway back here, you get the free counter charge, which is great. So all around, it's just solid. You get a restand, you get triple drive, and you're only really discarding 1 handguard. And if you want to, you could run like the gold dog that Sam runs and then just counter boss 1 and then call it, because honestly the deck doesn't need too much CB, so you can just get more attacks out of it. Either way, Avantgarda is a solid grade 3. Its skill still feels a little basic because of how the deck relies completely on set orders, but considering it also relies on a starter too, which granted makes it a little bit more of a crutch and kind of makes it more piece reliant than other decks, even though the starter is almost always guaranteed to stand. So it just feels nice to have that little bit of uniqueness, and not to mention the fact that he can send orders to soul to restand. So all around, good card. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck. That's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very interesting. Like I said before, I didn't really like this in set 9, and maybe it's because I get to call these 2 more because, I always like having ride deck cards in the rear guard circle for whatever reason that may be, or maybe it just might be the fact of Hanada Hathaway and this thing over here, but the deck just feels so much more, I don't know, better in my mind. Like, not just play style, but just like overall how it feels. So maybe that's just me. Either way, I'm gonna end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us on Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to set up your Vanguards.